When the United States entered Vietnam in the 1960s, it brought an undefeated track record and the most powerful industrial war machine in human history. The military had spent the last 2 decades optimizing for conventional warfare, preparing to fight massed tank formations and heavily fortified bunkers across open plains. The political motivation for intervention was built on the domino theory. Washington policymakers believed that if South Vietnam fell to a communist insurgency, neighboring countries across Southeast Asia would inevitably collapse one by one, spreading Soviet and Chinese influence across the globe. But almost immediately upon arrival, the American strategy hit a wall. The troops deployed to Southeast Asia were equipped to fight large-scale, visible armies. In the dense jungles of Vietnam, those fixed targets simply did not exist. Instead, the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army fought a highly coordinated, decentralized insurgency. They operated in the shadows, utilizing the dense canopy and local geography to neutralize America's technological edge. Thousands of aircraft and millions of tons of artillery shells offer no tactical advantage if an army cannot locate the physical infrastructure of its enemy. To survive, the insurgency moved the war underground. Looking at this diagram of a Viet Cong tunnel complex, you see their architectural answer to American air superiority. Subterranean hospitals and sleeping quarters allowed fighters to survive beneath U.S. bases. On the upper levels, hidden firing posts allowed guerrillas to ambush patrols and vanish. These structures survived relentless B-52 carpet bombing because of the region's specific soil science. The earth here is composed of old alluvium, a clay-heavy soil highly concentrated with iron oxide. When dug out and exposed to air, it hardens like concrete, making the tunnel walls incredibly resilient to explosive shockwaves. Above ground, the Viet Cong employed a tactic they called hanging on the belts of Americans. By engaging in extremely close quarters combat, they ensured U.S. commanders couldn't call in artillery or airstrikes without hitting their own men. To counter the subterranean threat, the U.S. sent soldiers, known as tunnel rats, into the claustrophobic earth corridors, with nothing but a flashlight and a pistol. The environment itself was heavily weaponized, often using America's own supply chain. This 1967 U.S. Army training circular explicitly notes that Viet Cong forces made extensive use of captured American materiel. Unexploded artillery shells and discarded equipment were gathered and wired into deadly traps. The table of contents in this manual categorizes these improvised threats into distinct sections for mines, demolitions, and booby traps. This level of technical documentation reflects the highly organized industrial nature of the insurgency's engineering. By utilizing the terrain and building an impenetrable subterranean front, the insurgency stripped the U.S. military of its technological advantages, locking American forces into a grueling war of attrition. The Ho Chi Minh Trail functioned as a 15,000-kilometer logistical spiderweb. Branching pathways of footpaths and dirt tracks wound through the neutral jungles of Laos and Cambodia, funneling tens of thousands of troops and weapons directly into the south. The U.S. attempted to sever this lifeline through Operation Rolling Thunder and subsequent campaigns. Over the course of the war, American aircraft dropped hundreds of millions of tons of explosives, totaling 260 million individual bombs over Laos alone. This aerial reconnaissance photograph reveals exactly why the bombing failed. The trail is almost entirely swallowed by the jungle canopy. Even when bombs destroyed a segment of road or convoy, laborers simply cut a new bypass through the surrounding brush within hours. Frustrated by the invisible logistics network, the U.S. military pivoted to physical environmental warfare. They began deploying heavy bulldozers to literally scrape away the jungle foliage, hoping to expose the tunnel entrances and supply lines hidden below. When machinery proved too slow, they turned to chemical defoliants. Aircraft flew low over the canopy, spraying millions of gallons of Agent Orange to permanently strip the trees of their leaves and destroy local crops. The campaign poisoned the soil and devastated the Vietnamese ecosystem, creating profound long-term health consequences for both locals and American veterans. Yet despite this massive ecocide, it failed to halt the flow of insurgent supplies. The environmental destruction caused immediate, catastrophic blowback. By bulldozing villages, burning crops, and raining chemicals on the countryside, the U.S. military alienated the very South Vietnamese civilians they were tasked with protecting. Faced with indiscriminate destruction, local populations turned against the American presence. Villagers across the South began to actively hide, feed, and recruit for the communist insurgency. Meanwhile, the American public was watching it all unfold. Vietnam was the first living room war. Every evening, television news crews broadcast the brutal, unfiltered reality of combat directly into American living rooms. A massive credibility gap opened between the citizens and their government. Officials continually claimed the U.S. was winning, citing high body counts as evidence of progress. But the nightly footage of endless, unresolved violence told a starkly different story. The breaking point arrived in January 1968 with the Tet Offensive. North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces launched a massive, coordinated surprise attack, striking over 100 cities simultaneously. The offensive cost the North tens of thousands of casualties and was repelled militarily. But psychologically, it proved to the American public that the enemy was highly capable and fighting with limitless resolve. Domestic political support evaporated. Young men deserted or dodged the draft in record numbers, and massive anti-war protests filled the streets of Washington, ultimately forcing the U.S. government to abandon the campaign. The United States withdrew its forces in 1973, and by 1975, Saigon fell to the north. The conflict proved a harsh reality of modern warfare. Tactical superiority on the battlefield means nothing if you misunderstand the environment, alienate the local populace, and lose the political will of your own nation.